Here we are. Welcome
once again.
Year and a half later, the second episode. The Art of Existence. We've been working for a little bit of a while. Put out a masterclass. We've chatted, we've done some stuff, and we've decided to partner up to build a little bit of business.
To do some more work, yeah. Well, it's been an exciting ride, being sort of old school, technology is not my first choice of things to do. I'm a face-to-face kind of person, but learning from you over the last couple of years, the benefit of reaching more people and helping more people through technology and the internet and providing great content, I'm excited about it.
I'm pretty excited too. I've heard you describe yourself, we'll do a little bit intro to you right off the bat, but I've heard you describe yourself and what you do is as helping people age in the right place. I love that. What does that actually mean to you?
Well, it's funny, for years, there's studies come out over and over. People want to age in place. And it just doesn't ring true to me because it might not be the right place. Many people stay put because of fear, or they can't make a decision, or even denial that they have to make a change. So really what I want to do is help people age in the right place, whether that is something, a family home, or whether it's a condominium one floor, or maybe it's a retirement residence, someplace where there's safety, security, it's financially feasible for them to move forward.
A lot of families think that real estate is just buying and selling, right? Just buying and selling their homes. What you do goes way beyond that, like way beyond that. Compared to any realtor off the street, you do way beyond that. How do you describe your personal role when you go into real estate? And I guess there is a transaction, you're a real estate agent, but how do you describe your role?
Actually on my business card, and it's my program Housing TLC, which is Housing Transition and Lifestyle Consulting. So I'm really first a consultant, and then I manage the transaction. It's two different things. And why is it two different pieces? I think we've talked about it before. When we're younger, we have a definite goal to buy our first house. And maybe as our families grow and they have a few children, the goal is to get something bigger. And maybe our careers moved along really successfully and we want to live in that dream neighborhood. All along, we've had a goal. So for the realtor, it's the client comes, I have a goal of a bigger house to fit my family, and they fit that into a new home. And as our clients get older, there is no goal anymore. There's no bigger house. There's no need for children. There's no need for more space. We have to consult on what the next move is. So it's more planning. I actually created a plan for a major real estate company. It was called Real Estate Planning, is where we're trying to create a plan to move forward, to make sure that we're enjoying that those years of 60 plus.
I think you're completely right. When you are in your earlier years of your life, the goal or the need just arises. You get pushed towards, like, I have another kid, I need a bigger house.
Which you have another, just had another one. Yeah.
And so you don't really have to think about it. You're just gonna this is what I need it now. Let's figure it out. And when you came to that later, the golden years.
Hey, I'm in those golden years.
Very bright golden.
Bright golden, yes.
It's a little harder, right? Because you're not pressed as much, and it's not so easy in front of you what the next decision is.
Yeah, even though we know that we have to make a decision in the future. With rising costs, especially home maintenance costs and taxes, it becomes very expensive to own that quote-unquote family home. The safety aspect becomes very important, and the internal safety is, whether it's two-story, maybe the washrooms aren't set up for people that have maybe arthritis or bad knees or bad hips. External safety too is that many family homes are in in a subdivision where there's nothing around. It's just, other houses. There's no walking distance to shops or supermarkets, right? And so there's nowhere that people can go and get the necessities of life. Even going to get milk and bread may be a challenge. So, it's an interesting time in our lives.
Before we get to the transition, can you share how you got into this niche? Because, why seniors? Why this kind of work? We're in beautiful Oakville, in a beautiful Oakville Park. What got you here?
Well, actually, it's, if you pan the camera over to our right here, there's a war memorial celebrating veterans from World War I and World War II. And my dad was a World War II veteran. He was in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he served overseas. And when he came back, his first job was with the Saskatchewan government, and he was helping soldiers transition from the military to civilian life. So he would talk about housing, he would talk about jobs. Even though his career changed dramatically, he was always giving people advice or helping them plan for the future. Unfortunately, at his funeral, many of his employees came up and thanked, attributed my dad for helping them plan a very successful career. So there was the seed of planning has always been in our household. And watching my dad and my mom, they had the family home. It was a large home in Oakville, and they had a cottage, and they were managing fine because they were in good health. And unfortunately, my dad got diagnosed with a debilitating disease that would have hindered him over the next 4 or 5 years in managing those properties. And I sat down with him, and then actually at the same time that I was talking to him, I was working at a real estate company helping design an education program for how to deal more effectively with seniors, and there I was talking to my dad about it, and I still remember the language he used. He said, "Michael, it will be selfish of me if I don't have a plan in place for your mother if something happens to me." And I love that term, it was selfish, because not having a plan usually leaves someone in distress. So he wanted to make sure my mother was in a safe environment, something that was manageable for her, someplace where she could walk and meet new people. I don't know if my dad foreshadowed that, but they moved into a beautiful condominium in Oakville, and 6 months later, unrelated, he got pneumonia and passed away. But there was my mother. She was in a new environment that was safe, secure. She eventually made new friends in her environment, and she had the next probably 10 years of her life were so happy because she wasn't stuck in that family home worrying about what to do or where to go. So I guess even though that I had followed seniors housing for years, my dad and my mom really showed me what successful planning could do.
That's beautiful. I think sometimes we don't know how mystic life is, and we might know we're preparing for something, we don't we don't know why.
No, it's my sisters and my brother, they always thought it was just like, my dad must have had some sort of foresight or something, so I thought about that. But again, I'd like all my clients to be in that position where if something happened, whether it's, struggling with the activities of daily living, or we're slowing down when we get older, or there is a death, is that their partner is in a safe, secure environment where they don't have to stress out about, I've got to sell a home, I got to get rid of this stuff, I got to find a new neighborhood, that forced move versus a planned move.
Whether it's you who needs to make the move, or you need to plan for your spouse, or it's you as a son or daughter of an aging parent, like you having that, not being in that position where it's do or die, we have to do it now. Because in those moments, as I think that in life we all know, when we hurry, when we're against the wall, that's where predators, people take advantage. You're put in situations that you have to, make compromises that it's not really usually to your benefit.
Well, just if you go to many of my colleagues are in the retirement home industry, and if you talk to them, their frontlines, sales staff there, is over 50% of the people coming in to tour a retirement home are in some sort of crisis. Mom or dad has fallen, there's, something that has happened that has forced this transition instead of them coming to tour and making an informed decision.
Yeah, I think a while ago, I was just having a discussion with my mom and just reminiscing of like when we arrived to Canada, and we were kind of shopping around on which town to move into. And Mama was like, not this one because of this, not this one because of that. And oh, I don't really like this one, but I guess I'd like this one thing about this town or this house. And I think it's finding something that you do like that kind of opens up your heart and your mind to the move. Maybe you don't like the whole idea, but you really do like the community side. Like, oh, I get to not cook for myself. I'll give it a shot because of that reason. It kind of opens up your heart to a decision, and then maybe it's the right decision.
Yeah, you use the term "open it up," and sometimes sort of my, that recently retired group of people that I deal with, they have the idea they wanted to move to a smaller center. They're going to move to a small town, and they really just get focused on picking that small town, but they don't look at the bigger picture. They just want to pick that small town. How are they going to assimilate in this small town? How's it going to impact family and friends that are, if you're moving to Sarnia, your friends back home? Is you really have to look 360 degrees on a move like that, on how it's impacting everybody. Because so many times I see people move to a smaller center, and suddenly they have an aging parent they're dealing with grandkids that suddenly came along, and then they're moving back or closer by. So again, it's making that plan for the future. It keeps going back to an all-encompassing plan.
I mean, just from talking now, it makes me feel it's not just about real estate. It's more about the emotions. Can you talk more about that?
Emotions. Okay, so
don't cry.
I tell you, the biggest. Is it an emotion? Is denial emotion? I'm not sure if it is, but I guess the biggest thing.
You feel it that way. I think if you feel it, you experience it.
The biggest thing I dealt with, when I first started creating, these programs, and I said this was back in 2000, I created a national training program. I always thought it was, give people good information, break it down into manageable pieces, because it's an overwhelming topic, and they'll move forward and make a housing decision. But the biggest thing is denial, is that we don't need to make a decision. But life changes quickly as we get older. I had an accident a couple of years ago, and I had to have a whole knee replacement, which changed my whole, just part of my life. I had to give up things that I really love to do, and I have so many, I do a lot of public speaking, and I talk to audiences about making a plan, and everyone comes up to me, Mike, that's great. That making a plan is a great idea. When I need to, I got to make a plan. And I'm just going, you can't plan, a fall, it's a hip operation, a hip fracture, a slow debilitating disease, or something major happening in your life. You got to have the plan before something happens, not in the middle of something happening.
Right. I mean, one of the reasons that motivated me so much for us to partner up with this is that obviously the market with seniors and people becoming a certain age is growing like crazy in Canada. We all know this. We've been hearing the bells in the news and everything. And obviously it's gradual. It's not going to be tomorrow the meteor hits. But I do see that, and anybody can experience this, as you get older, society starts to feel like they don't care much about you. Like things aren't crafted for you. People, they're services, but you feel a little bit left behind. And as I learned more about your service and everything that you do to really service that person, just that niche, the type of people, I think it's wonderful, because when you have options and when you have a plan, I think that you can experience life a lot different when like you said, when something happens and
there's no surprises.
Yeah.
And there's less surprises. There's always surprises in life, and but again, having that plan in place is so important, and for enjoyment. Like I know people that sit in their house on their own. Their spouse has passed away. They're in their family home. They don't talk to anyone. They don't see anyone, and they just can fret about everything. And it doesn't have to be that way. But just back, I just lost a train of thought there. But the system for helping seniors in Canada, or anybody, I'm thinking more of the medical system. It's a great system, but it's broken. It's overwhelmed. And people have this assumption that everything's going to be looked after. Well, in theory it is, but in practicality, the system just can't handle the people in it right now. So people say, oh, I'm going to get home care, I'm going to get all these things looked after, I'm going to have someone come in, the government's going to supply me someone to come in, a personal support worker to help me out, a nurse to come in, I'm going to have if I can't manage, there's going to be a long-term care. Again, all these things are in place, but they're overwhelmed. So
what does that mean realistically? Because I think people like that, well, even if they know that, obviously, you go to the hospital, you're going to wait 20 hours if you're not dying right now. But what is that real? Like, you get to that point and you thought that before. How will they see it realistically?
Well, we're looking at, let's say I've fallen or broken my hip, and I'm on my own, and I need to get looked after. I have to have someone come in and help me with my rehabilitation, my physiotherapy, maybe change of bandages or something like that. Is that, government subsidized home care can only allot such a small percentage of time because they have so many other places to go. So when you think that the government is going to make sure that you're safe and sound through your recovery, there's just not the time allotted to help that person, right? And, you're going to have to get supplementary care in there. And it's all going to be about in the future. It's all going to be getting supplementary care. Whether you need home care, you're going to have to bring in sort of someone to supplement that. If you're, if you can't manage on your own, you're going to have to get supplementary care in there. So it's just really understanding the landscape. And probably one of the biggest ones I see all the time is you see newspaper reports, 45,000 people waiting list for long-term care. There is no waiting list. Okay, it's a priority list.
Yeah.
I mean, and I keep saying, oh, we're going to get rid of this waiting list. There is no waiting list. It's priority. When the only people that are getting into long-term care are what they call a category 1, which they just cannot manage. Physically or mentally, they cannot manage in society any longer. And they're in crisis. And whether you've been on a list for 10 years or not, you're not moving unless until you hit that crisis point. So it's just educating about that whole, I do a whole series, and we'll probably do it together. We'll do a podcast on that, is the housing continuum of care. We live independently, and then maybe we get some home care. Maybe we look at independent living in a retirement home atmosphere, and then some assisted living, long-term care, and hospice is all that too. But just understanding the basics of each one of those gives you so much insight in making decisions.
I like that a lot, how you're saying. It's not technically a waiting list. You might be there for 10 years waiting. What's the usual first trigger for somebody to contact you?
A crisis. Unfortunately, it's crisis. And it's, something has happened. And most of the time, nowadays, it's adult children. In my peer group, and even younger, we're faced with mom and dad. Something's happened to mom and dad, and they're struggling to help mom and dad, move forward. And whether it's, I had a friend of mine whose mom, which every person does, is she fell cleaning the garage and broke her hip. Oof. And that set into a whole cycle of, couldn't live at home, had to look for alternative residence, wound up in a retirement home, but it was no choices. They're forced to do that because of circumstances. So I really want to take it from, reaction to planning, right? I'm not reacting to a bad situation, but I'm planning for the future.
So what are those adult children dealing with? What are they feeling when they're maybe trying to have that conversation through their eyes? What's their experience?
Well, first of all, is we have to, and I'm guilty of it. I'm going to use me as an example, is that my condominium faces the local high school, the football field, and I was watching someone do wind sprints. They were running up and down, and of course I was an athlete all my life, so I thought, I'd go down, that's great exercise. And in my mind, I was 20 years old and I was going to run up and down that football field and get some exercise. Well, I think I went, 3 things and then realized that I'm 60 plus. But as adult children, we have to realize in our parents' or grandparents' mind, they may be 85, but they're really thinking that they're 65 or 60 or even younger. Their mind is not equating what their body can do. And it happens to everyone. It's, is that we just don't We don't think that, we always think that we're younger than we are. So, me talking to an 85-year-old and just going, you can't manage on your own, and getting upset, in their mind they're going, I can do everything, like, I'm not feeble, but it's just our minds won't let us deal with the reality of our physical condition or our mental condition. So that's the big frustration for adult children. They can't see why mom and dad won't see what's really happening. The frustrations of mom and dad thinking that the kids should be doing everything for them. That's just the guilt that goes around. And, I don't think, I don't know how many times I used to ask my mom and dad, I says, what's good? So when they get older, they say, I just don't want to be a burden to anybody. Thinking sort of if they're hospitalized and immobile. But a burden is when, the adult daughter has to be over 5 times a week, checking on mom, making sure she's okay. She wants to do it, but it's 5 times a week. And then there's 3 doctor's appointments in the month that she has to drive mom to. And the statistics are unbelievable. The lost work time in Canada goes into billions of dollars in work hours lost with people caregiving for an aging parent. And most of the time, it all stems around inappropriate housing.
Really? Okay. I mean, you say the number of like, oh, the economy is taking a hit. I don't think anybody, that number, they care about the economy, but like personally, this example here, my mother-in-law right now, her stepfather is dying from cancer. We're all dying, but it's coming sooner for him. It's knocking at the door. And they live in North Bay, and the doctor that they're doing all the treatment and stuff is in Sudbury. That's a hell of a drive. Mm-hmm. And multiple times a week, she's driving them. Sometimes if it's easier, just taking time away from work and staying in a hotel over there. So, I mean, she's not going to work. The work's frustrated with her. She's frustrated with herself because she has to disrupt her job. Obviously, you love your parents, so you want to help as much as you can, but being a taxi driver, maybe it's not the right kind of help. But yeah, I see it.
Yeah, it's the right kind of, and it's so true because we only have so many hours in a day, and so many hours as an adult child can help out mom and dad. But if those hours are divided up by, maybe it's, the husband is helping look after the outside of the home and doing, fixing up the inside and doing home improvements to keep mom and dad's home okay. And then the daughter is, looking after mom on the inside, taking the appointments and, making sure she's got food in the fridge and all this. You have to sort of scale down that time that you're available. And, if that's putting mom in a location where she's closer to the hospital, closer to the family, these decisions have to be made. And sometimes we don't get what we want is, mom says, I want to stay here. Well, you know what? Sometimes you can't stay here. It's impossible. It's wreaking havoc on everyone's life. But there's so much fear involved because, I don't know about you, just the way I was, my upbringing, I was kind of terrified of my dad. He was an authority figure, and you get that transition where now you're kind of becoming the parent and they're becoming the child. It's a tough transition, right? You don't want to upset dad, but you got to lay the law down at some point in time because you're just enabling dangerous behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that. I didn't grow up with a dad, so I boss everybody around.
That's right.
I just do whatever I want. That's having that. And at the same time, because I'm thinking, like you said, you only have a certain amount of time. Would you rather spend that time, precious time, that you have driving around, being in chaos, or being and enjoying the time that you have with your parents? Sitting down, watching a movie, playing a board game, like actually interacting, talking about their past, or do you want that time being spent you driving them around, you waiting at the hospital, or I'd rather spend my time with my family members enjoying each other instead of just
Let's I'm gonna be I hope this video, it's all about honesty, is we're not in the best moods if I'm driving around having to look after somebody else and they're testy, I'm testy, and it's not a pleasant reaction. in my own family, and my other half, her family. I mean, not only are they fighting with mom and dad, but siblings. There's the sibling arguments. Johnny's not doing enough. I'm doing too much. No one cares over here. Like you get the internal fighting. So you get a whole family that's just going up in smoke, where we could alleviate a lot of that if we started with that plan in the future. That what if mom's on her own, and some people have the plan, but people say, oh, well, if mom's on her own, we'll just put her in the basement of our house. Well, again, that is a plan, but is it the best plan? Is that the safe environment? Does she have the ability to socialize? What does that look like financially? Again, we just got to make sure we're asking all the questions.
I mean, yeah, the next question is, if people are ready to make that plan, what's the first step? What is that in practice? Like, first of all, when did you think a realtor was going to actually help and make your life better?
Yeah,
that's why we had Michael here. How does that work?
Well, I guess is putting everything in context here, and we all think of a realtor as someone that facilitates a transaction. And as we started this conversation, when we get older, there's two parts to this. There's the transaction side, with after 40 years, I can do that pretty well. But it's the planning side that's invaluable. And people say, well, I'm not ready to make a move. Well, no one's asking you. As we sit down and we make a plan for the future, you might not move for 6 months, a year, or 2 years. But if something happens, we have a plan. And most of all, your family knows the plan. If dad passes away suddenly, we know that mom's already 2 or 3 great retirement residences that she'd like to be in. So instead of scrambling around, as we know, we're going to sell the house, mom's going to transition to that retirement residence, and we're going to move forward in a very seamless, well, as seamless as, a sad situation can be. But something happens to mom and dad's on his own, and it's just, everyone's in crisis. No one makes a good decision in the middle of a crisis.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. When we have a plan and we kind of explore possibilities, even if they're terrible possibilities and terrible things happen, we already have a plan, so we feel comfortable. And
are you guys filming?
Yeah.
Are you part of the team over here?
No.
We'll have a guest. Somebody else filming.
Yeah, I guess they're planning for the Remembrance Day ceremony next week.
When you have a plan, even if something terrible happens, I think people are less anxious, because I know for myself, when I don't know what's going to happen next, and there's so many possibilities. What if this happens? There's so many possibilities that one mind can't handle it. So you become so anxious, and what if this happens? So hyper aware of everything. But if you at least have a plan where, like, this terrible thing might happen and we'll do this. This good thing might happen and we'll do this. If you come to those situations, first of all, you can rest easy if in the meantime, and then when that happens, you can make that action.
Right, and by making a plan is, why don't we make a decision? You've heard me say this a million times. First of all, denial, we don't have to make a decision. Then lack of information, Then the magnitude of the process, it's so overwhelming I can't comprehend of it. And all three of those breed fear. And we can't make a decision when we're all fear-based. So what we want to do is, that denial is accepting the fact that we're getting older. Things will happen. They won't. They will happen, And then good information, well, what does it look like if I moved into a condominium? What does it look like if I move into a retirement residence? I don't understand what assisted living is. Understanding, what independent living is, assisted living is, others retirement residence it's special in, some sort of mental incapacity, and all these things. If we have those answers to the questions, that we can move forward. We're not sitting in ignorance, but I tell you, I could give you 50 people right now that are sitting in their home by themselves, not making a decision, paralyzed by fear, And the existence is, they're just waiting to something to happen, Instead of enjoying life, is that they're, they feel like they have to be in the family home, and everyone expects them to be in the family home. The kids expect them to be in the family home, and why do you have to be in the family home?
When my grandkids come to visit, When was the last time they came to visit?
I think I've told you the story, and I always liked to reset it, but I was meeting with a lady. She was 85, and she had it was a very, very high-end home, and it was terrace backyard, and it backed onto the Humber River, and a beautiful pool, and the landscaping was stunning. And I said, "That's a beautiful pool." And I said, "Do you swim?" And she said, she kind of laughed, "No, I don't swim. I keep it that way for the grandkids." Just at the same time, her daughter was coming from the kitchen, and she says, "Mom, the grandkids are 40 and 43. They got houses of their own." But I mean, again, we were thinking what it used to be like instead of what it's like today, right? So we have to, people say, I live in a condo, and I've made that choice a long time ago to live in a condominium. People say, "Oh, well, what are you going to do if you have a family function?" I have the greatest, down the hall, literally down the hall from me, I have the greatest party room and dining room that's part of my condominium. I can safely sit 20 people. I have an entertainment area that I could get 50 people in there. So that once a year or once every 2 years that I'm entertaining, it's my turn to entertain the family. I'm quite comfortable doing that. But people will make these roadblocks because they don't want to make a decision.
So for an adult child, to an adult trying to help out their parents, they probably feel anxious and they feel maybe guilty that they're not helping more. What's the first step? You think calling you? Because I like that, because just because you say, I'm not just there for the transaction, maybe that happens years down the road, but you're helped to make that plan. So you are a call to facilitate that's talking to the parent, setting out options. We're making a ton of material to help people move along and learn. So what do you think is the first step for that child so it feels like they did something?
What is sitting down and having a coffee and talking. Sometimes it is just as long. An hour conversation can alleviate so many fears, on how to deal with things and how to understand things. Is that initial conversation, it's, of where you're at, because, it's so intertwined with families and situations. But most situations have a common theme. It's, a stubborn older person that doesn't want to do anything, frustrated adult children, and so let's start untangling it. And what is the real problem by dissecting it? The planning process we go through is, we try to find out, what mom and dad really like about their present home. And I guarantee you, they don't like a lot about their present home because, I use the analogy, is it a castle or a dungeon? When it's, when they were younger, it's my castle, it's my home. But as we get older, it becomes that dungeon. It's, in the middle of a subdivision. It's not walkable to stores or anything else. It's big, it's expensive.
When was the last time you went to the basement?
Yeah, right? They haven't seen the basement and things like that. But breaking it down into manageable pieces, and it's not rocket science what I do a lot of times. We talk about the house. What do they like? What do they dislike about it? If they moved away, what would happen? If they moved closer to their family, what would happen? And what if situations, and we get it on the table and everyone's talking about it.
What are the positives? Like right now, it sounds like all the negatives about the home, but what are the positives of selling the home and moving into, let's say, early retirement residence?
Before it was all about the home. When we're younger, we talked about the first home, the move-out home, maybe it's the luxury home. So the focus was always on the structure. It's got to be 2,000 square feet, it's got to be 3,000, it's got to have a main floor family room. It's all about the structure. Now we're shifting to safety and socialization. Is the environment safe? Again, stairs, but one in 3 seniors over 60 will have a fall each year. Like the numbers are,
wow.
The number is just crazy. And you hear about people breaking their hip all the time, but there's 4 outcomes of breaking a hip, and only 1 is recovery.
Wow.
The rest are all negative.
Wow.
So safety and socialization become the focus. Is we talk about like what are the opportunities to socialize? And how often do you see people? And my other half, she's laughing at me all the time. We live in a condo, as I mentioned, and I talk to everybody. On the elevator, I know to everybody because I just, even if I'm a senior on my own, I walk down to the garbage chute or I walk down to the recycling room, I walk to the parking lot. I'm going to run into someone and say hello. Sometimes that hello, it just keeps you going for the whole day, right? Or, chatting about the weather or whatever it is. It's that ability to socialize. I mean, that's the beauty of a retirement residence, or, is the fact that you're increasing your ability for socialization.
And from my own ignorance, there's different types of homes like that, like for different stages that give you different things that you're looking for.
Yeah, and first of all my friends in the retirement community would kill you if you use the word home, because and all the great speakers that talk about retirement residences and that whole lifestyle is try to get away from the old image of what a home used to be. I mean, a home used to be the long-term care. I had a good friend from years ago. She would talk about the image of the green hospital walls. It smells, people yelling and screaming, people that smelled like urine, right? And this negative perception of what they think the home is. And we all know that, homes are, retirement residences they're beautiful. They're like cruise ships, they have all sorts of amenities, and, there's a Carnival cruise and there's a King cruise, all sorts of budgets that go along there. And so it's in that structure. Think of a retirement residence as a box. In that box, you can have independent living, where I have a kitchen on my own, I keep the living, and it's really about a safe, secure environment where I can socialize. Then you could add on services. Maybe I need some care. And then within a retirement home box, you could have an assisted living floor or wing, where those people need more help on a constant basis. Most of the time it's some sort of cognitive impairment that they need that assisted living. And some retirement communities have, they go all up to I hate to use the term, but it is a locked unit where people with some dementia cannot wander. I mean, that's the biggest fear of someone is wandering. So they actually, it's locked off. It's self-contained. I shouldn't say a locked unit. It's really just a self-contained environment where people can't wander on their own. So there's all different categories, and we use the wrong terms sometimes, and really understanding again that whole continuum. What's available to me? Many clients say, well, I hear they're really expensive. Well, it's like anything else. It can be $3,000 a month to $20,000 a month, but it's like anything in life. There's a it's your budget, but planning on what is that budget, right?
What would you say to the senior that says, I'm just not ready yet?
What are you waiting for? Really, I'm not ready yet. What is going to happen that would trigger you wanting to talk about this or make a move? Is it falling and breaking a hip? Is it a diagnosis of something that's going to impact your life? It's having that conversation. It's no one's getting out of here alive. And I used to soft pedal a lot of stuff when I was talking to clients, but I'm pretty direct nowadays. Like, you're not going to live forever. There's going to be a time when you're going to need help. There's good times when you can't manage all these things on your own. And having a plan in place that helps you manage, is invaluable. But if you wait for something to happen, it's as we get older, something happened. You could win the lottery, but more likely it's going to be a fall or diminishing capacity or something like that.
Right.
So the negative as we get older outweighs sort of the positive on that side.
I mean, if it's not obvious now, then we're not listening, but what's the difference between you and a regular realtor off of a bus bus ad?
It's, I guess, are we transaction based or are we resource based? I guess that's a good definition is, if you go, it's McDonald's is transaction based. I come in, I put my sign, I stage the home, I do a good job, and I sell the home. I'm paid for that transaction. And it's sort of, my thing is more resource based, is that I'm become a resource to the client and their family, and we take it from making that plan, implementing that plan, and just, there's a transaction there. Then we do the transaction. So And it's experience. Let's face it, I've been in the real estate sector for 40 years. Like I started when I was 21 years old, and involved in the seniors housing space. I've had the privilege of traveling all across the country talking about seniors housing, many different groups. So it's just that level of experience. Sometimes it's good to talk to another old person, I guess.
What's a positive example or a story you can tell us about a family that you worked with that actually, saw the plan and their lives changed positively because of it?
Several of them, but a common theme is that, and just like my dad, is that something has happened to trigger. It's not an immediate illness. It's something that's going to be debilitating over time. So they knew it was a Parkinson's, or it was and maybe it's an ALS or something like that. We started and we made a plan. It didn't have to be implemented, but it was going to have to be implemented in the future. So we looked at all the alternatives, we look at the outcomes, and we could make that plan going forward. So that's the scenario that you always love to see. And well, not love to see, is that people see a problem and they address that problem.
Yeah, if I had to say from my point of view, if you're that aging adult who has questions, if you're that child, you're that taking care of your parent or helping and want to see them better, and you have questions, I think that's the right time to either consume more of the content or reach out to, because like you said, I see you as a resource. When this is the first time people are going through it for themselves, you have studied this, you have made plans, you have seen so many scenarios that you can show up and sit with somebody and ask them a question and they can be like, I've never thought of that. I didn't even know I had that problem. And you already identified the problem that they had. They didn't know, they felt it, they feel something's wrong, but they didn't know why and how. You identify that problem and you already have 10 solutions, and I suggest this one or this one, it'd be the best. And you're just sitting down and you figured out the next 10 years of your life just with sitting down with you.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful thing to have that experience and that level of confidence when I sit with people. And but I guess and we've talked about it. I've done a lot of paid consulting in the real estate field, and it's funny when I'm a consultant, and I think we talked about, I work with not-for-profit groups and faith groups on helping them make plans with their properties. But when I'm a consultant and people are paying me by the hour, they listen to everything I say because I'm the expert. It's funny when people see that I have a real estate license, they feel like I don't have that level of expertise. And it's a real phenomenon. I'm a consultant. Oh yeah, what do you think, Mike? You're a realtor. My cousin has a license, and it goes through this whole thing of everybody has a license, So I guess one of the frustrating things about being a professional and being around a long time is that, because I think it was 1 in 300 people in Ontario have a real estate license because the market was so buoyant for so long, and putting in that bundle of you're just one of those people, right? Gets a little frustrating, and that's why we do these videos, and that's why we do the education, to see the point of distinction, right? That's having a wealth of knowledge, and working together. It would go full circle on what we were talking about. I mean, our plans, we're going to be doing some webinars. We're going to do some more information sessions. Maybe we're going to do some group work. Your wife being a Anglican minister, we're talking about doing some work with the older people at the church. We're going to do all those things to reach out and talk to people, because still it's fearful to ask for help. It's fearful to ask for advice. Right. So hopefully that online we can continue to give tidbits of information, and if people need more, we're going to have the ability to correspond with each other. And we've had some great, in the past, I've had some great Zoom education sessions where we can sit with a group of 10 people or 20 people online and answer those questions and feel comfortable with it.
Right. So you've spent years guiding people, 2 or plus years, guiding people with the hardest decisions they have to make. I think purchasing property, homes, anything is one of the toughest decisions that you do, because like I said, maybe you do once in your whole life or a couple, but It's not enough to get a pattern, to get good at it. And then you add to the point where it's like maybe your final transition, your biggest asset across your whole life. So you spend your time consulting those kind of families and children, aging people. What is personally the thing that you've learned the most about families as a whole?
Most of the time they love each other. But, families as a whole, it can be so divisive, dealing with mom and dad. It can be, I have a friend of mine, I met a high school friend, I saw at a party a couple of years ago, and I asked how his mom was. They lived around the corner from where I grew up. And with this, puffed his chest out, Mom's still in the family home. And she's well into her 90s. Yes, and if I have to carry her up those stairs or down, she's going to stay in that home. And I'm just, why? It's not this life sentence to be in the family home. And, then others, we have family members that we want to get mom into a safe, secure environment. So there's this fighting on what to do, how to do it. And with a house, the tough part is that everyone has a place to live. So everyone has an opinion on housing. So I'm faced all the time is that, people want to give advice on housing. Oh, I'd never sell it this time of year. I'd never do this. Oh, the market's terrible. It's, this is my business. I do this every day of my life. I'm in the real estate sector. And my colleagues at the office, that's their job. Just because you sold a house 3 years ago and made $50,000 on it, you're not an expert on housing and real estate. So again, especially for the older person, they're getting opinions from their kids, they're getting opinions from their neighbors, they're getting opinions from the church group, and it's impossible to make a decision when you have so many people interjecting those opinions on you. And I'll give you an example. I have this lady, wonderful lady, she's on her own, no family per se, and she's serious accident, almost passed away. And so she's moving into a retirement residence, kind of reluctantly, but knows that's the right thing to do for safety and socialization. Loving neighbors, they know her all well, and they're all going, oh, you don't have to move, or, she mentioned, oh, should I wait till spring? Oh, yeah, don't move, don't sell, well-meaning and caring, but you're not offering, you don't see the full story,
Yeah.
You're making it from a real estate point of view, you're making it housing.
If you wait another 50 years, honey, I'm 92.
So again, it's so much input of like anything in life, we get so much input on information, and much of it is bad information, I get questions about reverse mortgages all the time. In some situations, that is the most perfect financial vehicle for people. For other people, it is the worst financial decision. But if I have a plan in place, if I know that I want to spend the next 3 years in my home and enjoy it, but it's getting expensive, and you could, access that equity and enjoy that the next 3 years, and your plan is to move on in that year or 4 years, that's a great vehicle. But, so many people are just going, oh, I need cash flow. I'm just going to, there's no plan to it, right? So, it's just getting good information. So what I deal with, again, is denial, lack of information, magnitude of the process is so overwhelming, which generates fear. And fear paralyzes us and we can't do anything.
I think if you put yourself in the shoes of that aging either parent or just, like you said, that example of that lady that doesn't have family, I think I'll see when I get that in that stage. I think when you get older, you everything's so uncertain. Although it's very certain that you're going to die, but everything becomes uncertain, and you don't want to make your kids angry because then they won't come visit. You don't want to not listen to them and offend them because you feel like they're trying to help you, and you don't want them to stop helping. And I think you're trying, even though maybe you do know personally what's the best option. It could be just selling the home and going into a retirement home, getting meals cooked for you, playing, it could be that, but you feel beholden to kind of listen to everybody, to make nice, and, so I think that's where I think it's talking to an expert like you could let everybody say their piece, but at the same time, it's like, well, he's the expert. let Michael listen to all your kids. And
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes trust me. Many times I've been the lightning rod for abuse because of the things I suggest, and I don't mind being that lightning rod. You know, because people are frustrated, especially adult children. You know, and the stories. You know, we're on the edge of the baby boomers turning 80, and the stories are just going to come fast and furious as you know, we're all aging. But you know, everywhere I turn, it's just my age group right now is everyone is coming into in the middle of or exiting a crisis with an aging parent or grandparent. I can't turn around and someone's telling me, oh, it's a story, and most of them are not happy stories. You know, they're not, and especially the emotions that are involved and the frustration that's involved. Mom won't listen to it. You know, well, are we listening to Mom? You know, they just won't do what I say. Well, you know, do they understand what they need, right? And just looking at it different, because we all, again, and we talked about it before, is as we age, we remember what we used to be. I have a great slide in one of my presentations, and there's a daughter and an elderly woman sitting beside it. So it's mother and daughter, and the mother's looking out the window, and the reflection, she doesn't see an old person. She sees when she was a nurse, and she was a vibrant member of society, right? Daughter turns and sees an old woman. There's in the next slide I have there's an older gentleman, and he's looking in the mirror, and he sees when he was a fireman. You know, a well-respected member of the community. Everyone looked up to him, you know, and that's still in their minds, and we have to be cognizant of that's their perception of the way it is. And, you know, it's tough, but I mean, it's just breaking it down into manageable pieces and helping everyone understand that, you know, these are the choices, you know, that we have to make. These are decisions we have to make.
Right. Is there anything else that you want to leave off with the message? Somebody who wants to reach out, we'll have the information. They can reach out, but
really to understand that, where it's, you know, that you're not alone. You know, we understand what you're going through. You know, I can't solve things, but I can sure shed some light on a lot of things that you're going through. And doing nothing is not a solution in anything. You know, denial is you know, if we're dealing with an addiction or anything, denial is the first thing we have to get rid of. Is we have to accept where we are. We have to accept we're older. And I said, you know, with my knee replacement, I used to play hockey 4 times a week. You know, the doctor saying, hey, Mike, that's probably not a good idea. So that's a huge, simple change in my life. But I mean, now I have 4 days of the week that, you know, what do I do with that time? You know, and just another example of how we're so geared to what we used to be and how we used to perceive ourselves. I mentioned I did a lot of work with faith and not-for-profit groups, and they'd have committees, and it would be a building committee or a future planning committee and everyone on those committees, probably age was 75 to 80, 85 years old. And all the gentlemen on those committees, the first thing they would say, I used to be. Because they wanted me to know that they used to be a president of a company, they used to be an accountant, they used to be, like, that they were going to be judged on just being a volunteer. Mm-hmm. And they wanted that recognition that they used to be somebody. And, you know, to feel that minimized, and you know what? Sometimes I feel that way, you know, that, you know, don't you know who I used to be kind of idea, you know? I've jumped out of airplanes, I've raced cars, I've done all this neat stuff, you know, and now can't do that stuff anymore. And I still want to, you know, when I first started selling real estate, I was the youngest guy in the office by a long time. I was 21 years old, the average age was probably 40. And now I think I'm the oldest by a long time. I think the average age is probably 35, you know, so I get that aging thing, but we got to get everything in perspective and help people move forward.
Right. It can be the best time of your life.
It can. It also can be if you sit there. The closing thought, I was giving a lecture. There was probably 60 people in the room. It was a retirement group in a smaller center in Ontario. And most of them were ladies. Unfortunately, us gentlemen still die a little earlier.
Yeah.
And I asked the group, I said, who thinks about their housing situation? And I went, once a year. And a couple of people put up their hand, and it says, who thinks about their housing situation maybe once a month? And a few more people put up their hands. And who think about their housing situation weekly or daily? And I swear it was 65% of those people.
Wow.
Were just because, and they were caught in that loop. You know, I have a great little diagram on one of my slides. It's, you know, it's getting caught in that indecision loop. You know, we should stay. Oh no, maybe we should look at a condominium. Oh no, not a condominium. Maybe I want a backyard, so maybe it's a townhouse. Maybe we'll renovate. Maybe we'll move out of town. Maybe we'll look at a retirement residence. Oh, maybe we'll do nothing. And then what happens again? We start this again. We should do something, and we get caught in this loop of indecision. And we can't make a decision, because how do we break out of that loop? You know,
Right.
First of all, we have to make a decision that we need to make a decision. You know, and then we got to, you know, we get the information we need about the housing, our housing options. We add that new component about safety and socialization. You know, we look at it, you know, we look at it from the kids, the grandkids point of view. What's the impact of mom and dad moving closer to the eldest daughter, who seems to be doing all the caregiving? And, you know, Johnny's going, well, they should move closer to me, even though Johnny's not participating in any caregiving. He just wants to have a fight. You know, so, you know, and so many things, so many stories we have, and we're going to be sharing over time. And, you know, some of the pitfalls that we'll talk about, you know, people sells mom's house, the adult children sell their house, and they buy a house together. It's a great idea. And then what happens when mom can't manage on her own, and we have to go to a retirement residence, and all our equity is tied up in the house? How do we get out of those things, you know? So, you know, people moving way out of town and realizing that they miss family and friends so much they have to go, or their health situation deteriorates. You're talking about Sudbury, like, you know, I have friends that move from, you know, Oakville to just Collingwood. There's a shortage of family doctors and, you know, and professionals in Collingwood. So, you know, as they age, they're going, maybe we should move back closer to, you know, the beautiful Oakville Hospital or Joseph Brandt, or, you know, because they're going to get the care that they're going to need. So decisions that wouldn't be top of mind when we're buying our first house, they become top of mind, you know, as we get older.
So if you allow me to finish it off with,
no, I want to keep going.
Okay.
I love talking. Oh, no.
we'll be doing this a lot, so don't you worry. And basically what I want to say is, that's what we want. This is one of our many goals here, is to provide all that information, open up those doors of maybe, you know, taking tours of local retirement homes. Maybe
you said homes again. Don't use the home.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's a retirement community, yes.
Retirement palaces. Maybe sending Michael to bingo night or activity, so you guys can see the real life of what it is. Right. You know,
and even again, you know, understanding, you know, condominiums and maintenance fees. I mean, I wish I had $1 for everyone that says, I'm never moving to a condo, it has a maintenance fee, you know. But understanding as we get older, that's, you know, that's just a type of living arrangements, you know. It's, you know, it's a freedom fee, really, because I'm free from all those things that I had to do before, right? You know, it's our perception. You know, before it was, if I'm thinking back to my mental state, is I used to do all this myself. It never used to cost $800 a month. Yeah. Well, you're 80 now, and you can't do all those things in your life, so we just alleviated all these pressures on you. But again, it's perception, right? What it used to be, what it's like today. So we have a great journey coming up with us, you and I, and over the next however long, it's continue to hopefully get content and get people interested in planning for the future.
Perfect. We'll add your socials so people can go follow you. And until next time.
Beautiful. And I tell you, here it is in November, and what an outstanding day.
Have a look.
It's beautiful.